About 2 months after Washington's Superintendent of Public Instruction, Chris Rakedahl, told the Center Square he was willing to meet with two female athletes who have become the face of the effort to protect girls' sports in Washington, Rakedahl made good on that statement. And he met with these young women and their parents on Wednesday. As previously reported, we've talked about how Rakedahl has refused to comply with federal directives from the Trump administration to keep biological males out of girls' sports and out of girls' locker rooms and out of bathrooms in their middle and high schools. He has stated repeatedly there is no public evidence to back up that there are only two sexes, that there are only biological males and biological females, and that folks, however they identify, should be allowed into these spaces and should be allowed to compete in girls' sports. Of course, we have the initiative coming up on the ballot here in November where voters are going to have a chance to weigh in on how they feel about that. Now, when I had the opportunity to sit down with uh, OSPI's Rakedahl, Chris Rakedahl, in early February, I pressed the issue. I asked him why he had not met with these two young, brave women, Frances Staudt and Ahnaleigh Wilson, who have, unwittingly become the center of this explosive issue. And this is what Superintendent Rakedahl told me back in early February.
I want to ask you because the Republicans held the listening sessions on Tuesday on the two initiatives. I know I was told that you were invited and some other folks that are in opposition to the initiatives, but why did you opt not to go?
Well, I don't think we were invited to those, but
I was told your office was invited.
I think they did a general they put a big thing. Everyone come, but it was their rally.
Well, I'm not talking about the rally, but the listening sessions afterwards, which, because the bills aren't getting hearings, there were a lot of folks there. Might that have given you an opportunity to sort of hear from some of the folks that
I've heard? We get lots of feedback from folks.
Okay.
And I've read the initiatives, and we're very familiar with them, and they're similar content of the initiatives prior and the testimony last year. Listen, these are going to the voters, which is, I think, what the sponsors wanted. They want these to go to the voters because they're confident they're going to pass. That's exactly what they're getting. And so they can keep fighting in the legislature whether to have hearings or not, but it doesn't change the fact that the voters know what's in these. And there's going to get ample time to look at all those. And there's going to be a vote on those and probably litigation. And so that those have got their own path.
What about those the two girls that have been most vocal in the movement? I know they've asked and called you out, like, we want to meet with you, sit down and hear our story, because they feel that they have been victimized in all of this. Have you considered meeting with them, or would you be willing to sit down with them and just hear their story? Because, they've had impacts because of the policies.
There's no role we have in trying to address what happened when one of them used a derogatory term or called out at somebody. Like, there's something that happened in a local school district. That's the local school district to figure out. I meet with students all the time on both sides of this. I'm happy to. I am not aware that they have said, we would like to come meet with you or have a video call with you. I'm willing to do that.
Okay.
To listen, because I listen to everybody,
Right.
But it doesn't change the fact that there is an initiative out there that people are on both sides of, and the voters are going to get to decide, and then it's going to get litigated very likely.
Right.
So
fast forward to yesterday, the 1st of April, Wednesday, when 16-year-old Frances Staudt, a student at Tumwater High School who sat out a game her freshman year when an 18-year-old biological male was on the opponent's team, and 16-year-old Ahnaleigh Wilson, a student at Eastmont High School in Wenatchee. She lost out to a biological male in an 8th grade track meet. She was really the first student to raise the voice in all of this. And along with their parents, they met with Superintendent Rakedahl in Tumwater on Wednesday. And it was the first time these families have had the opportunity to share their story with the superintendent, who has been openly critical of them, publicly critical of them. And Frances told me that one of her goals in the meeting on Wednesday was to get Rakedahl to say, I'm sorry for suggesting that you used derogatory language about the biological male that you didn't want to compete against. And unfortunately, she did not get what she hoped for.
In a recent interview with you, I believe, he said that I used derogatory language. And because of that, I was investigated for harassment and bullying by Tumwater School District and the WIAA. And the words that I said that put me under this investigation and that he claimed were derogatory, which later I will get into more, but was "you're a man." And that was seen as an issue in the eyes of these people. And I later asked him about it in this meeting, and he said that he did not read up fully on the situation, that he read it in the newspaper. Mm-hmm. And to have a state superintendent making these claims about me, at the time a 15-year-old girl, on public record, that I use derogatory language, that is awful to publicly say. And when I asked for an apology, he said that it would create more issues for him and I, and he wants to protect my safety. Mm-hmm. But when he says that I made derogatory language, does he think that that's protecting my safety? When he's saying that as a state superintendent of Washington, when he's saying that I, as a 15-year-old girl, made a derogatory comment, that isn't protecting my safety, and he said that he will think about it. And clearly he did not think about it when he made that comment about me in the first place. Because if we're thinking about things, he might want to think about what he says about me, because that wasn't right of him. And so I think if you're going to make these claims, and you might want to read up on the facts, and if you say that you read it in the newspaper and aren't completely sure of what happened, then I think you should be careful about going and saying that on a public platform about a 15-year-old girl who you're supposed to be protecting.
His way out of everything was just that he has no power, no control over any of these issues, because this is the state law and he doesn't have power over that. But then later, when we were talking to him, he says that he does have some influence. So that's when we were confused, because he just admitted that he does have some influence over these laws, but he's just not doing anything. But he doesn't want to just say that. So his way out of every question was, I don't have control, I don't have power, we just follow state law. But later he admitted that he does have some authority, some power over, influence at least, over what is happening.
And with his little power that he claims to have, he's not at all supporting the girls. He's only supporting these transgender individuals. And so if he is saying that he has little power, he could use that power to protect the girls, and he's not doing that.
Now, Frances and Ahnaleig's parents are mighty warriors for their girls in all of this, no matter where you come down on this issue of trans athletes competing in girls' sports. If you've got children, you know how fiercely you want to protect them. And so both girls' fathers are an example, maybe for many of us, of how to father our girls. And they made that clear in their conversation that they had with the superintendent on Wednesday. And one of them specifically didn't make any bones about the fact that he believes things are reaching critical mass with this issue.
There are some dads out there that want to take matters into their own hands. And it's not because of hate. It's not because of anything. It's because we have these precious daughters that we spend all of our time trying to tell them, lead with love, but be rational. And we see how they've been treated. And I've had a couple of times where I've wanted to go and have a talk with someone. I'll leave it at that.
Seeing her confusion initially in this first track meet that this happened, and seeing the hurt on her face and the kind of lack of understanding of what just happened, losing to a male, and not knowing it ahead of time, where maybe she would have made a choice to sit out like Frances did. She didn't have that choice. She didn't know ahead of time. And seeing her reaction to that, and then having a coach on another team hear her frustration speaking with her friends and tell her that if she's going to complain, she needs to go somewhere else. That was one of those moments that is as a dad, I'm like, okay, if someone's telling my daughter that she should be quiet about voicing her concerns, that's not going to happen. And there were many moments that I was like, you know what, I don't like to speak publicly. I don't like to make a big deal about things. Usually pretty quiet about stuff. But this is a moment that I knew I couldn't stand down and say, just going to let this go. And her courage inspired me to stand behind her.
Now, both families told me after meeting with Superintendent Rakedahl on Wednesday, they didn't get the sense that anything's really going to change based on the conversation they had. They did say several times he suggested that his hands are tied by state law. But at the same time, he is not willing to comply with federal directives from the Trump administration. And the families told me also that Superintendent Rakedahl suggested that he expects the pendulum is really swinging back the other direction toward protecting girls in sports. But he said Washington's really not there yet. So thinks we're going that way, but he's not willing to kind of insert himself in things at this point. Now, remember, there is that ballot initiative that's coming up in November that would protect girls' sports for only girls. The other initiative that will be on the ballot in November, also brought by Let's Go Washington, is the ballot initiative to restore the Parental Bill of Rights as it was before lawmakers came back and made some amendments basically to undo the Parental Bill of Rights. So, again, those are both on the ballot in November. Much more to come on this, but I was so grateful to have a chance to sit down with those two families after that critical meeting with Superintendent Rakedahl on Wednesday, something they had hoped to have happen for um, well, more than a year and a half, the one family, nearly 2 years that they'd been hoping to have a conversation with him. So, grateful to have played a hand in that and grateful that they, were are that strong in their fight moving forward on this.